Thank you for coming to our panel discussion. I think I know most of the guys personally, some of them in business, so this is going to be a very casual discussion. And I hope we all leave here hoping and feeling there's an opportunity, or there are opportunities for us to find money for film and television business.
Yeah.
I always tell people that there is no money. It doesn't fall from trees, especially for this. So my name is Mainzeke Baza. I run a boutique global sales and distribution company called AAA Entertainment. So we're based in Joburg, but we do global distribution for film and television. And I have a panelist of esteemed individuals. So I'm not going to really spoil it by introducing them. So I'm going to ask each and every one of them to be able to sort of introduce themselves, tell you who they are, tell you what they're all about, and then we can get into our discussion. So I think today we want to focus mostly on what are the current investment trends that exist in the film and television business, what are the opportunities, as well as the challenges. I'm sure we all understand what are the challenges of finding money. So hopefully within the 45 and 50 minutes, we can try to cover a lot of that. So I will start with, and on the other side, just to tell us who you are.
Yeah, sure.
And how you fit into the discussion.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Mainzeke. So, by way of introduction, my name is Anthony Kimball, and I'm the CEO of Arrested Industries, and a producer and partner at 5X Media. We're based in Los Angeles. But I was born in Zimbabwe, grew up in South Africa, and so I am truly passionate about bringing both African talent and African stories to a global audience. And in fact, my two main creative collaborators are based right here in the beautiful city of Cape Town. And I'm just currently in the process of optioning 2 local TV series for adaptation both in the US and in the UK.
My name is Ian Paul. I run a boutique distribution company called Indigenous Film Distribution. We are particularly focused on local content film, first and foremost. We have been around for about 15 years now. I think we've handled about over 160 feature films produced in South Africa, obviously across all platforms, but the key market for us is to sell to Africa. We tend to collaborate with people to sell globally. And we also developed that. I think that's one thing we do that's not necessarily always built into every distribution company. So, Tim Kazmana is our development exec, so we both develop our own content. We develop with producers or writers, and then we distribute the content and sell it to every single place that we can, the best places for that particular feature film. We do a little bit of limited series, but the business is largely focused on feature films.
Good morning, everyone. I'm trying to hear myself over the noise. My name is Attendees, and what I am depends on what day of the week it is. I'm a writer, producer. I directed the Black Book on Netflix. And over the last couple of years, I have been working to expand the financial or investment landscape for film production in Nigeria, mostly. And that's why I'm here, I guess. And my partners are here as well. These are the actual people who know more about money than I do. Maybe it's been doing this for a long time. But they put me here as a poster boy. So if I don't know anything, go talk to me. Thank you.
I think I'm going to try that because it sounds much better. I just met Aditi, and one of the things that I can tell you about him is that he smells damn good. My name is Jamil Kolani Tanika Kubega. I'm a South African filmmaker hailing from the Eastern Cape. My career now has been spanning 23 years of independent filmmaking. I come from the school of do it in any which way that you can. So I'm looking forward to this discussion because I think it's really where we're at, even in the crux of things today. It's gone back to full circle, back to the independence, and that's an exciting thing.
Thanks, Jamil. Yeah, I guess that we can almost start the discussion I want to look at everyone here. I'm sure they all want to know what it takes to finance film or television property.
Yeah.
But before we get to that, because I think we have a sort of variety of people who've done different things from end to film and television. Helen, who's really an expert in local film distribution, market, editing. You did the Black Book, which was a very big thing on Netflix. Same as Jamil, you did Queenstown Kings, which also these are really some of the biggest feature films that ever been watched on Netflix. So I think maybe I'll pose it to the both of you. What did it take for you to finance those two properties? So I'll use those as an example because I think everyone has a project they want to finance into the market. So we could start with Black Book. You know, what are the often challenges of you creating, if they were, to, you know, in order for you to get your project into the platform, but also just to finance it? And how did you finance that specific property?
I think that the first thing you and I, the relationship, how we met, was trying to distribute the Black Book.
Of course,
which to you it was like, how did you go on and create this film without having a buyer? And I remember when I told you, this is the film, it's gonna be really great. And you're like, yeah, we've seen something. This is how much I want from it. And you're like, they don't pay that much. I'm like, well, that's how much I want. And so the biggest takeaway from me then was that if you want to have it where there's no way at all, you have to create a way. Sometimes you have to create your own path, because the path that we now have established didn't exist. And so we're going to make this film, and we think, and first of all, I guess I have to step back and say that I believe, my sincere, deep belief is that African stories are global stories. We can tell stories from Africa for the globe. And what the Black Book did was show that that was possible, being number one, like around the world. It was a top film in South Korea for weeks. And it's black faces, black directing, black money, African money, Nigerian money. And the point there is, it is possible, right? But previously, nobody thought that was possible. And so to do that, we thought you gotta create a certain standard for filmmaking to make that possible. But no one finances that, because again, there is no reference for an African film, a Nigerian film being a global film. And so this is why, as with every business, please, as you're coming up, make good friends along the way. Have good family if possible. Now, you can't choose the family you're born in, but you can make good friends along the way. I used to work in tech and advertising, and so I made a lot of friends going up. And when I needed money, first of all, you have to put your own money. Unfortunately, that's what it is. Put the money down, and then go to the guys who were nice to on the way up, and they came and co-financed. But in Nigeria, it was also the first time to have private equity putting money in film. It never happened before, but it happened because we were able to harvest personal relationships, bringing them on the cap table. And now we are almost strictly talking to institutional investment. That did not exist before. So the point I'm making is, yes, it's difficult. Yes, there's no path in many cases. South Africa, there might be more paths to funding, but in most places there aren't. And so we have a responsibility as maybe pioneers to do the right thing on one hand, and also build the relationships that allow us exploit the privileges that we have built. It is those privileges that will create the path for everyone else coming behind us. Thank you.
No, thanks for that. Just before Jamil, you speak, so, and everyone, of course, can understand the context of who you are, right, Jamil? And when I come back to you in terms of what now that's
a big assumption
on the platform, and what that is doing for you to finance the next project. But as you know, you've made some of the really biggest prolific content or films from South Africa for the world.
Please don't call it content.
That is traveled. international markets, both myself and Helen Quinn have had the privilege of representing some of your projects globally. And with Queenstown Kings also becoming one of like Blackbird, becoming like a big sort of really explosive property within a streaming platform. But the journey hasn't really been easy in terms of really actually financing projects for the market. So maybe just to take us through that, what have been the challenges? Are there opportunities now, but is it still difficult to actually finance independent content? Because I think both of you own the content. So we're talking about independent content that's bought and commissioned, but independent content. So for you, how has it been, that journey? And you could almost take us to Queenstown Kings, going into the platform.
I think a lot of it has to do with the development of the visual medium itself, in terms of how we view and consume the product. The trends of the past, if you look at the history of film, from cinema to television, how television influenced cinema, and then eventually now the streaming platforms. All of these different technologies have actually dictated, I believe, the temperature in terms of how we make films. And I said it in a different panel that the advent of where we are with the streaming space, because let's be honest about it, right? Streaming has saved filmmaking. Prior to this, we were all scratching our heads thinking, maybe I should try something else. So it's been positive in that regard. However, what it's done is it's brought the principles, I believe, of television making, and it's now dictated the terms in terms of filmmaking. I'm specifically talking about cinema, right? In that now, the producer, it's become a producer's medium, the feature film, which is a shame. I must just say that to all of you. It's a damn shame, because essentially what it means is that film is no longer what it was in terms of it's a communication to the market and people. But to get back to your question, for me, I believe you got to read the room. I always tell that to young filmmakers. Have a whole plethora of projects and read the room. Don't sell ice to an Eskimo, so to speak. So I've got a plethora of projects that we've developed to different levels. And for me, it depends on who I'm engaging and what are they after. So I looked at the Netflix platform and I looked at what were they streaming for. They wanted a property, they needed a property that really spoke to South Africans, Black South Africans specifically, and in a way that they could recognize themselves. So to me, that is always the departure point. What does the end user want?
Yeah.
So from there, I went back and I looked at my plethora of projects, and I found a title called Queenstown Kings. And that one was perfect for the platform, because again, it's a reflection of South African society. Don't believe what you heard. Soccer is the biggest sport in this country. And I wanted to reflect it in the realist way and make a family film. So that's what I essentially sold to. And it was a no-brainer in that way. Again, this idea of carrying a crucible for a particular project because you've got to get it made. Yes, but is the climate right for it to get made? That's the thing you got to read, because everything has a time and a place. So it was the time and place for Queenstown Kings. We were screaming for that kind of product. And because of that, it was easy to get people like you and everybody else involved in terms of it and interest. So yeah, read the room would be my answer.
Yeah. And I think maybe to that point, before I go to the money people, so from an understanding of actually finance, because I want to come to the difficulties, because yes, you've made a project, it's reached a global platform, you made a project, you've developed it, but was it easy to actually find the money? What is that formula that allowed you to get that project to make it?
True grit, that's it. I've always operated from that since my first film, a time called Descent. I've always operated from a place of true grit. And I think you need that as filmmakers, because essentially the climate will always change. So are you going to get swept with the wind, or are you going to have fortitude in regards? Obviously we had the challenges with our rebate. that has really played a huge part in things. But I'm very positive. The space there has opened up. The likes of Justice and Nelly Molokanya have really come to the fore in terms of now understanding what it really means in terms of actually servicing this industry. So it's been a very difficult road for us. Yeah. And we still continue to struggle. I don't know what the Minister of Arts and Culture is speaking about when he says that we're driving around in Range Rovers and the like. Mine was taking.
So, we'll skip that part.
I think the comment there is that when I traveled, I was in Brazil the other time, and they were talking about government and the reduced funding, and he's talking about, rebates, and in Nigeria, we don't have anything like that.
Totally, yeah.
Right, no, like you guys, I'm Nigerian, man. We don't have rebates, we don't have government funding, we don't have any of that. Oh, they started talking and giving loans this year.
Yeah.
Because all of a sudden, film is now exciting, and Nigerian films are making waves around the world. But the point is, if you want to do something, and you want it hard enough, just like with any other and every other industry, you have to fight for it.
Yeah.
Again, I'm coming back to the fact that we have a responsibility as the people who have had the privilege to actually create things, make things. I might have got a couple of friends to come in and set this new standard for filming and making film. But every Tuesday and Friday on sets, I had to make an investor memo every week, twice a week, to send out to those investors. This is where we are, this is what we're doing, and this is why we're investing this much, so that we'll return a certain amount of money to return your investment. You have to constantly ensure that your investor, but be it government, be it a rebate program, be it private equity, sees where the money is going, to educate the money people. Because it's the way that will allow them walk with you, make that walk with you.
Yeah.
Whether the film returns investment today or not, when people have an understanding of what they're creating, and we do it diligently enough, they make that a journey rather than a destination.
Yeah.
And with film, it's not always guaranteed that it will be successful. I try to make the only films I've made have all been successful and profitable. Thank God.
Yeah.
But there is a universe in which that is not the case. And so we have a responsibility to be responsible and carry along our investors, educate our investors, so we wouldn't be hearing that, we're driving around in Range Rovers. Right? What it is that investors, the people signing the checks, needs to see the journey. When you see the money in the film, you won't complain too much now. Right? You'll be saying, okay, maybe the next one will, but you have to make that a journey for people who invest in the properties. Thank you.
Thanks for that editing. I mean, these both have even told me where they got their money, right? To make these two projects. I guess that's what everyone wants to do. But I think I'm gonna jump to end, because you cut across all different models. So you have film, you have television, theater, and I think from your perspective, and you've worked locally and globally, you're based in LA and London, but also you work a lot in South Africa, being born here.
Yeah.
So your perspective from what it means to actually finance a television or a film property, what are those challenges from your perspective, and what are the opportunities that exist?
Gosh, I mean, I think there's numerous opportunities here in South Africa at the moment, but what we find the most challenging thing when we're trying to finance international shows with local broadcasters is making sure that we have a local broadcast partner on board the show from South Africa. Because when we're trying to, because I work mostly in co-productions, so it's very, very difficult to try and get international financing for local shows unless you have, for example, like a Showmax or a Netflix or Amazon, even though they've only been here briefly on board. But once you have those, local partners and a guarantee of a local incentive, then it becomes a much more attractive property for international partners. I'm just working on a project at the moment called Paradise, which is a South African show being produced by Physical Pictures. And, we had a Disney Plus International green light about 2 years ago, just when everything was going really well in the States, and they were sort of expanding internationally. And then overnight, they turned around and cancelled it once Bob Iger came back and made all of his sweeping cuts. So we had to sort of go back to the drawing board and now figure out how are we going to produce this, this local show without an international partner. So we've come back and now we've got Prime Media Studios who are just making their first foray into scripted, which is great news and exciting. So I think there's some new people coming into the scripted space in the local territory, which is really exciting, and they will then obviously help us get that onto the SABC. So now that we've got the SABC on board, we can then take it to the US, to the UK, and sort of bring in an international pre-sale to sort of cover the rest of the budget.
Thanks for that, Ed. And I think as you said, there isn't really a specific formula for that we can slap the industry with. It sounds like it's almost going to be project specific.
No, for sure. And I think just it's becoming more and more complicated. It used to be much more simple. You'd go to a local broadcaster, they would pay for the majority of the show, and then you'd go to an international distribution partner, and they would pay for the deficit, and off you went. But now, the need for international partnerships and co-productions is much more because everybody's budgets have shrunk, specifically in the TV world. So now, we're looking at doing sometimes not just co-productions, but tripartite co-productions with 3 or 4 partners, equity investors, as well as then, rebates and soft money from both different territories. So if you're doing an Australian and a South African, treaty co-production, you can tap into 2 centers. You can tap into the Australian soft money and the South African soft money, and then a distribution advance from the local, from an international distribution sales agent. So it's just become, I think, a lot more complicated to finance, film and television projects than it used to be, unfortunately.
It's a shame. I mean, everyone is not like ADT where they come from a good family, they've got some really good...
My father was a secondary school English teacher.
No, I'm just...
Please.
We've got good friends, and we've got biggest... But anyway, I'm just feeling it. So, coming to, I think, for you, H, you've been sort of like the dawn in terms of local distribution of films in South Africa. And so you come from a long way where you used to be the only distributor, right? Or exhibitor that is very specifically looking at black content. And everyone else almost says that there was always this notion that there is no market for the content we create. That it didn't exist. But over the time, it's proven that there are pockets of market for the content we create. If you look at these 2 gentlemen's projects, doing very well globally. But you would then expect, because now there's a market, then they should be easy to finance some of these projects and get them into there. And there should be money available running around. So I guess from your perspective, so give us a bit of an insight whether what does it take? Is there money? Where do we get money to actually finance the projects or the movies from your perspective to get to these global or local platforms? Is there money that's available? Where does it come from? And what are the current opportunities for everyone else to go and find the money?
Yeah.
I think to pick up a little bit on what Anthony was saying first and foremost, is all of our roles have started changing in the last few years, let's say, with the advent of streaming. Because it's something that was never there. You can only ever take content to a platform that actually exists. Yep. So, a decade ago, I know Netflix was there, but it was particularly focused on the US. You couldn't take it there. It didn't exist. If you needed to reach your home audience, which is always the first and foremost important one. Even for the streamers, if the content doesn't work at home, even if it works in the rest of the world, they needed to work at home. The actual audience is at home, and that's where you have Star System. We don't have that yet. The volume of content that's come out of Nigeria for decades is significant. You look at their box office every week, The studio films date around the local films in Nigeria because the market is so strong for its own films in its market. So South Africa's evolved a little bit differently in that regard. We needed to release, film after film after film to basically get our audiences to buy into the fact that we could make good films. Because our television, even on a soap opera level, was already a pretty high level if you compare it with some other countries from a quality point of view. So that was like entry level, and our audience mindset was, that's a soap I watch for free at home. You can't give me that on a big screen with similar sort of story ethics, the same kind of melodrama, and think I'm going to go out and pay for it. So it's somewhat of a different development arc between, if we look at the countries that have films that we're talking about now, yeah. And I don't think it's easier, right? There's just more ways of doing it. So you can do a part of a pre-sale with a streamer or a broadcaster.
Yep.
You can do a combination of equity, obviously, whether it's private or otherwise. Tax schemes. We do have a rebate system with DTI, which is in another evolution stage. What the streamers have done, and which the part that has become easier, and COVID strangely also helped with that. When COVID struck, all of a sudden people around the world were watching streaming in numbers and hours way above and beyond what they did before, which meant that audiences started sampling content from other places, because even though there's 18,000 titles on Netflix in the world, or there's over 80,000 hours, titles on Showmax, over 21,000 titles on Amazon Prime, as examples, you still watch what you watch and you like what you like, so you want more of that. And then when you're tired of that, then you start looking for other versions of that, if you like, which would be fresh stories to you from other places. So that opened up a recognition factor for content from here, from the continent, that gave us, in a way, a direct connection with the consumer or the viewer that was trackable by the streamers in numbers. So it was no longer, the risk was already taken, because the budget that they apply comes from the country of origin. So they are unlikely to pay beyond a certain level on a certain continent, because the money that is earned on that continent is what's applied to that continent.
Yeah.
But COVID meant that we got eyeballs in a way that we didn't before, because you look at Jamil's films, for instance, his awards list must be this film around the world, across the films. But to get people to watch those films in the environment you're describing, sales agent putting an MG, then selling it territory by territory, releasing it locally, it is a very different process, and there's very many sort of risk touch points, if you like. Sales agent has to take a risk. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 distributors have to take a risk all around the world.
Yeah.
Right, so it's a broader version of people assessing the content and then saying, I'm going to take a bet on this, or, because sometimes, honestly, content remains professional betting in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah.
Sometimes stuff just shoots the lights out and no one can explain it.
No.
And other times, all the boxes are ticked. It should be doing massive numbers, and it just flatlines. There's the 80-20 thing. The trend is generally close to the ballpark. But the value of our stories is starting to be affirmed by audiences outside of here, and we've got affirmation from our audiences locally now, really in a way that we didn't have in the past. We're still building a star system, and that's really where Nigeria has a massive calling card. They can say, I've got this actor, this actress, that's going to be worth X in my local market, whether it's local market viewership of a streamer or a broadcaster or a cinema release, that helps with financing. Yeah. We have to rely on, our system is more built around directors and producers, and we have great actors, obviously, as well, but we don't have that mania factor, that you find in Nigeria. Like, you have to have, the big guys have to walk around with security guards, because people are just, it's like Hollywood, going insane when they see it.
Yeah, I think so.
And it looks like Edith doesn't agree with you.
Well, wait until it's been on the screen.
I don't think it's as much a disagreement as, the grass is always greener on the other side. But I was watching Sarafina a few days ago. I grew up on Sarafina. It was made here. Now, we're just, because of the success of the Black Book, just getting into rooms with international studios. You guys have been doing international studio production since Abraham was a boy. So please, allow us this small son that we're seeing. It's new. All right, but for anyone who's doing this journey afresh, when she said MGs, international MGs, and I understood what MG is, I'm like, okay, we're moving up in the world. We did not know what that was 3 years ago. For anyone who's asking, an MG is a minimum guarantee. You want to make a film and say South African film and going to the US to distribute. The guy who is taking that, the distributor might decide it's not worth anything and tell you, we'll see when we see. Or they could think it's good enough to give you a minimum guarantee of what the film could make. And so that is also a privilege that is only enjoyed by the people who've become successful making other things, and mostly in their local countries, or break out that get into those deals. And so the prayer, I guess, for your mom in the village or in the town to pray on her knees is that please make this filmmaking child of mine. I know it's not a career, but if it is, make it successful enough for them to get in the rooms to get an MG.
Yeah.
But so this is how it generally happens. You make a thing, you put everything into it and hope it succeeds, and it does. And then all of a sudden, the studios are calling you, and you're speaking to people who you see on screen.
Yeah. I think of course, being in the distribution space, it's not always easy because MGs don't come. It's
Often
it's a
later.
word. It's becoming more even difficult now, right? To get because people are tightening their pockets.
Yeah.
Distributors don't want to take chances.
Yeah.
But I think before we get, because I know we don't have enough time. I don't know if we have time to take some questions. Okay, before that, so I think now that we sort of ascertain and figure out that there are some challenges and some specific models in terms of how we can finance film or television, maybe just one would just sort of maybe give me an insight of what's happening in your next project, right? And how are you really packaging that for the market? And then I think I'll start on you in terms of what's your next project and how are you financing that project for people to understand it.
I've got about 5 or 6 projects going at the moment. And the reason again for that is what I was saying firstly when I said you got to read the room. As we've all agreed, there's no one specific model of finance. So you've got to be able to see who are you able to access, for one, and do they see value in you and your product? That is key, because essentially this is an investment. One aspect I didn't touch on, which I've been writing on since my first film, is the cultural aspect of things. I come from the rural province of the Eastern Cape, and I've really milked that in terms of how I finance films. I always go to my respective government and be like, listen, man, I'm making a film here with my people, back us. And so I salute the Eastern Cape Development Corporation. You guys have been with us since day one. And other entities within. And that's just the Eastern Cape. Wherever we go, you've got to access the local government. I'm not saying that they have funds. A lot of the times they don't have money, but there's different ways that resources can be chipped away from, essentially. But I've got a project that's coming up that has global ambitions, if you will. It's probably going to be one of the most expensive films ever made in this country. But in that, I know I had to read the room first. I couldn't have been able to garner the people around me to make that particular film when I was making Of Good Report. Nobody knew who the fuck I was, excuse my French, right? But I've had to build up to that point where certain people can look at me and be like, oh, okay, you want to make a what? $17 million or $18 million film? How is that going to represent itself? And what it is, basically, it's you setting yourself that target, but then knowing and understanding the mechanisms that you have to put in place. My name, my brand is not enough to carry such a weight. So essentially, I find people to collaborate with. My executive producer in my next film is the great Michael Mann. So to have someone like that behind a project, it means then that we can knock on different doors.
Yeah.
So you got to be realistic with your offering. Be like, okay, if this is the project that I want to make, who are the partners that I can get on board? I got you on board, you know, amongst other partners, but you got to be realistic. Like I said, don't sell ice to an escort.
I can talk about my next picture. Hi guys. Because you know those things that you sign, but I generally I'm not a big fan of like making announcements. However, we do have a 5. No, it's not superstition. Like I remember when I was making the Black Book, I didn't have any. We didn't do any press going in. We didn't do any social media. Nothing, which is strange for the market we're in. People start selling the films from when they announced, but I didn't at all. So it's kind of like I just want to do the work. But we do have a 5-year slate of films, both local and international. Next year is going to be very busy for us. We have about 4 projects. Sorry. We have 4 projects filming next year. I'm directing at least 2 that I am aware of. I don't know what Mimi is going to say tomorrow. They've kept me busy. Shout out to Mimi Thandega, who's my script editor behind there. They have kept me busy. So there's that, and so we're working on a bunch of different projects, and in the next couple of weeks, we're going to be making those announcements against my wishes. But that said, one of the things that I thought I should, 2 things I thought I should say. There's some people in this room that I'm looking at who were having this conversation about cinema versus streaming, that streaming is destroying cinema. Bros, I'm Nigerian. And there are between 62 and 65 cinema screens or cinemas in Nigeria. It's not enough. For the scale of films I'm trying to make, our cinemas cannot return on investment. Streaming is literally saving our industry. It is streaming that builds the brand that is now making the big pictures I am making internationally. If it wasn't for streaming, I would not be sitting here. And so, we cannot, as Africans, afford to have the same chip on our shoulders as the guys in Hollywood. You know, when we go to LA, the conversation is different, but we are here at home. And we have to recognize, none of us will be here without streaming.
Yeah. So, coming the same.
That's 1. And 2 is that, look, guys, no, I'm Nigerian, right? And my reality is very, very different. Again, remember I said, we don't have rebate systems, we don't have Eastern Cape coming on board in your production. We don't have any of that. And without streaming, we would not be able to have an international film industry. People have been making films from Nigeria for decades, in volume, in quality, right? And it's only streaming that's allowed Nigerian films build the audience that we currently have. It's like saying Afrobeat to the world. Afrobeat to the world would not have happened without the DSPs. So streaming has democratized access and audiences for us. And we have to, I know it's cool to be a cool kid, but it's also important to recognize what is practical. And that is the practical reality. And so that is it. And for us, I think that is the power that we've maybe harnessed for the next generation of things that we are doing. And I'm really grateful to the partners that are doing that for us. Shout out Netflix. Thank you. All right.
Yeah, thanks for that. I think maybe just before I open up for the people to ask questions, to both of you.
Yeah.
Because you're not necessarily the content creators, the producers. And whereas and you also become a producer. Whereas you almost like the guys who give value to the product that's being created.
Yeah.
Now, from a financing perspective, and maybe both if you know if there are any other, there's always a talk, there's new money floating around, right? There's IDC, there's different banks, there's African coming out of the wood. Does this make this industry better? Can you say if you have a property to create, you can go to these banks and find money to make it work? Or is it just becoming more difficult to actually even access this type of financing opportunities?
Yeah, I mean, I think it is difficult to access the financing opportunities, but I think what you have to be very cognizant of, and I think the guys have mentioned it previously, you have to be cognizant of, selling something to a broad international audience. Because that's the only way the financiers are going to be comfortable lending you large amounts of money is if they know that show, that film is going to find a broad international audience and, make loads of sales internationally. And so they're able to recoup their investment along with the distributor and any other equity investors. Because if it's not going to speak, if it's too sort of hyper-local and too parochial and it doesn't travel, then, that's not good for anyone, unfortunately. So that would be, my sort of biggest take-up. And the industry has become incredibly risk-averse with, the collapse of, the US studios over the last 3 years. It's been a bloodbath. So, all of the buyers are now incredibly risk-averse. So they want broad international properties that will travel and that will find as big an international audience as possible. So, yeah.
But I think something we're maybe missing is even in streaming, the bulk of the content that they're licensing from here, they license only for Africa. So they don't license everything for the world. If it's commissioned work or it's originals, obviously they're going to want the world. But the bulk of the content that they license for Africa.
Yeah.
So it is extremely, as much as there's the global market and funding structures that looks at global revenue, there's countless titles that's on streaming that's only available in Africa.
Yeah.
And the same applies around the world. There's countless titles available from various European countries, only available in Europe.
Yeah.
I think next challenge is to bring our content to look at home better. Home being, in fact, our local audience is always nothing story. Local content is seen by South Africans as South African content. By people from Kenya as Kenyan content. By people from Nigeria as Nigerian content. We don't have strong enough support from ourselves across the 54 countries that we see local content, or our audiences see local content as from any country on the continent. We're not there yet. So there's potential for collaboration between different African countries. That's not an established sort of structure or partnerships or whatever yet. So I think there's something there. There's still a lot of work to be done for us. I mean, we're miles away from even vaguely. But it is important to remember the local market, first and foremost, because if local films didn't do well on the streaming platforms locally, they would pick up a title for international.
No.
So, I think there's just these two layers. And I think it's like literally from your village or your community, your neighborhood, films that people make and they just show. You brought it up. You started that.
I'm always attracted, just in terms of bringing international financing to local shows, I'm always attracted to what, are quite organic co-productions. So, an example of a feature film that we're working on right at the moment, which we're developing with BBC Films in the UK, is the life rights of Johannes Rodebe. It's called I Am the Dance. His memoir was on the Sunday Times bestseller list for 6 weeks. Incredible rags to riches story of Johannes, who was born in South Africa and then has now become a huge international celebrity in the UK. So we'll be doing that with BBC Films, developing the script, and then we obviously have a local South African partner, hopefully in Prime Media Studios, who want to come on board, and then we'll obviously have to raise additional financing, and we've got the 40% tax rebate in the UK. So it's those sorts of stories that are sort of very organically that lend themselves to both two territories, for example. So
man, I think that's the whole notion is that there isn't really a formula that you can slap across the industry.
Definitely not.
There's no way you can say, in order to finance films, follow this formula. In order to finance television, this is the formula.
Someone would have published a book by now if it was.
So I I've only got 9 minutes, so I'm gonna take 3 questions, and then I'm just gonna really close up the session. So if anyone has a question, speak now. Go.
Good morning. Morning. Morning, everyone. I'm Marcus on this show. My question is to Helen. You did say that South Africa doesn't have a star system. And one of the things that has been noted is that streamers has kind of taken away the power in which the celebrities had. And it's given new lights to new faces. You can see examples with face stories like Madam Muta and so on and so forth. I think my question is, what are we not exaggerating the power in which celebrities have in terms of unlocking the money from investors? Hasn't streamers presenting a totally new sort of like way of doing things? Is it that important to have these big faces in order to unlock the money that is needed for these projects?
I guess let me take another 2 questions because I'm just cognizant of time. Take 2 questions. Just hold that question, Helen, for you.
I'm wondering if any of you can weigh in. The department doesn't even respond to media queries about the rebate system and how it has changed. So I'm wondering if any of you can sort of give a sense of where do you feel you know what has changed and where the department is actually planning on going with the new setup, the new policy or whatever they're having in store.
Okay. One more question.
Good morning. I'm from Jamaica, so my situation is a little different here on the continent. But I'm very curious about the comment about streaming democratizing the situation. So what I want to know is, when you say streaming, what do you mean? Are you talking about the majors like Netflix? Are you talking about fast channels? Are you talking about the Wild West of YouTube here? What do you think works best, or is it some really great combination?
So I'll leave that for you. So we'll take, we'll go for you, Helen, first.
It's
Or anyone else you want to.
actually, I guess South African acting is largely, it comes from theatre, right? Before that's how our actors generally start with plays, and then they move into audiovisual and whatever, and they work across the medium. We have bankable, as in recognizable talent. Our celebrity culture is, I guess, largely driven by influencers, but that's not necessarily actors. So you do have that dichotomy. You may have a mix in a particular piece of content that maybe somebody that's got millions of people following, then sometimes having 30,000 people that's dedicated is more valuable than having 10 million people that don't look at every post that you post. So what's made our film successful as far as the on-screen talent is concerned has actually always been an ensemble cast. And that remember that principle of when the camera is on you for 30 seconds, for those 30 seconds, you are the star. So to get the performance level at a top end level has worked very well for us. So we have recognizable talent that have, good experience, and often our films or series have new talent in it as well. Because you might be a big star if you were potentially new in a Showmax series or a Netflix series or something on SABC, but outside of that viewership base, you may not be that recognizable. So it's again that collaboration is everything. Whether it's finance, whether it's casting, collaboration is everything.
I mean, I've worked on a number of different multi-choice shows with my production partner Quizzical, and the 2 shows that have sold the most internationally are both the shows that have had one piece of recognizable international talent. So Reika had Ian Glenn, Game of Thrones, White Lies, and Natalie Dormer. And those 2 shows have literally sold to over 180 territories, told by as what is internationally recognizable face for their audience. So I think it's hugely important, and especially in the States, obviously, the celebrity culture is complete. Unless you have a huge A-list cast, director, writer, it's all about the attachments. just on the auspices. If you want something to sort of resonate and find international finance, unfortunately, that's still the case.
Okay, thanks for that.
I think with attachments, I want to say that it's generally advisable to not paint yourself into a wall. To not paint yourself in a position, oh, I don't do this, I don't do that. If it doesn't mess with your value system, be flexible. One of the attachments we have for a picture we're doing next year that I'm really excited about is an NBA basketball player. He doesn't do anything, he doesn't act, but as an executive producer, he helps us tap into a huge audience.
100%.
Right? Yeah. He's not in the film industry. Oh, I don't work with influencers. Great, fantastic. But we're trying to build something here. And sometimes the guys who will get you where you need to get to are not the guys who are traditionally guys who do that. And so you have to be flexible. Find value, maximize value, build, the railroad. When a train comes, nobody knows who's going to get off of it. But the railroad has to reach the village first, Abby.
Excellent. So I think the last question was on the issue of whether the DTIC, I'll throw it to you since you love the DTIC as well as
Well, I do love the DTIC because they're a critical part of our process. And as South African citizens, we cannot let them go. They're a critical part of our process. As a country, I think the culture of South Africa is the squeakiest wheel gets the oil. And that's what I would encourage out of all of us. I come from a school of thinking that you should sue your government if you have to. And we have. What really messed up our rebate, I would say, was probably the COVID pandemic. It really did a number on us. They themselves, as government, never mind the rebate itself, but they had to reconstitute where money went to. And we were the biggest victim of that. Unfortunately for us personally, we were doing one of the biggest TV series at the time in South Africa called Blood Psalms. So we couldn't let go or afford for the rebate not to be available. And we went to court. It's not something that we wanted to do or could even afford to, but we had to go through that process. 3-4 years down the line, we are now in a space where this particular office understands the pains of the industry to a way where I would say, don't stop the engagement. Don't be like, no, the rebate doesn't work for me. It's your rebate. It's our tax money, people. So as filmmakers in this space, we have the right constitutionally to work with that office. So I praise the likes of Justice Ngwenya, praise the likes of Nelly Molokanya, and say to you, those are the two people. Knock on their door, send them emails, do whatever you need to, be right there at their door if you need to, but engage them. But yes, the rebate is certainly open for business, but you're going to have to fight to get it. That's how government works, I guess, It's like getting your tax return.
Yeah, there was a last question about streaming.
I'll say one thing about the streaming thing, because we all come from different perspectives. So there's no right or wrong. I am not in any way discrediting the hustle that you speak of, and it's necessary. I'd like to make you aware of the other side of the coin. I come from a different school of thinking because I was inspired into filmmaking not from a business perspective. It came from the love of cinema and the love of the pantheon of great filmmakers across the world who made films before me. I said I wanted to join that group. So I come from a meritocracy thinking in regards to how I endeavor myself in terms of the films that I make. I want my films to speak to the next generation that comes. I don't want to be, the hit of the week, so to speak, and then just be gone and disappear into algorithms. So I am an advocate of cinema as we understand and celebrate it. And in that space, as much as streamers have given us an opportunity and a space and a platform for us to make these films and also have access, there's also another side of the coin, which has been the dilution of meritocracy. The majority of stuff that we consume, we're dealing with a market where 99.9% of it is trash. Yep, trash, absolute rubbish. From here to America to wherever you go. I didn't grow up in that way. I'm a child of the 80s. I grew up in the 80s where commercial filmmaking was the best kind of filmmaking.
Yeah.
But now that it's so been commoditized, as I said at the beginning, where the artist is no longer leading the field in terms of film, actually movie making. That's why you've got this dearth of rubbish. But yeah, so I come from a space of meritocracy, just saying that yes, let's engage the streamers, let's work with them, but fight for the brilliance of the stories that you want to essentially tell, because that's what will have the longevity. 10 years down the line, the work is still on those platforms.
I only have 0 minutes, so I'm gonna.
Okay. Well, here's left me to respond, and I would say one of the things I kept saying is that we have a responsibility. I use that word not very carelessly. Responsibility to one, ensure that streaming is a platform for audience engagement. The quality of the content that you put on that platform is your responsibility as an artist. And the guys working with me, my execs, what's the first thing I say when I'm dealing with a streamer? Creative control. The final version of the story has to be me. In fact, the feedback I want from you is no feedback. As regards the quality of the story, as regards what artists I cast, I don't have any suggestions from you. What it is that I have a responsibility to deliver the quality that's required. My quality standards are higher than your quality standards. I don't mess with that. And it's very important for us to hold on to that responsibility. When you are responsible enough to ensure that the quality that gets out there, no one is going to tell you what to do. Thank you. And so to the lady from Jamaica, hello. In Nigeria, we have YouTube channels that are dedicated, like producers who make films exclusively for YouTube. There's producers making films for different online channels, for TikTok, for Instagram. And they distribute these films and they monetize it. And I don't even know how they do it, but they do it. Yeah. Okay. And so do what works best for you. I don't gatekeep medium. The medium that works for you is the absolute best medium. Totally. All right. So cinema is not the best medium. Streaming is not the best medium. YouTube is not the best medium. TikTok's not the best medium. Is what works for you. Do what works for you until you can afford to do what you really want to do.
Yeah.
All right. And so that is the final thing. My last thing would say, Nigerians, South Africans, you guys, we need to work together a lot bit more. Okay? You do need to unite our industries. And the last thing then would be that coming here wasn't easy. I was supposed to be at DFM a couple of weeks ago. I could not go to DFM because the South African embassy decided I'm not worthy to come to your country. Yes, I used to do business when I was in tech and advertising. My vendors used to be South African. I have never met $1 from South Africa. If the transaction was the other way around. My script editor is South African. My producer there is trying to engage South African vendors for our next project. I've never made money from here. Yet, last time I was at the South African High Commission in Nigeria, I was roundly disrespected. And I was like, guys, we're no longer, I stopped doing business with South Africa in 2012.
Yeah.
I did zero business with South Africa until I met with Pandega. And so it makes no sense that our countries that should be working together are acting the fool. Both of us. We need to stop that nonsense and get to making this money because it's there to be made. Thank you very much.
Again, with those final words, I thank you for coming to our panel. They still haven't told me where they get their money from. So hopefully, the next session will be able to give you an insight in terms of where is the money, where it comes from. But thank you, my people, for making the time and the insight. And I hope everyone else really enjoys the session. Have a good day.